meeting of Colac Otway Shire Council on the 1st November 2023. Almighty God, we seek your blessing and guidance in our deliberations on behalf of the people of Colac Otway Shire. Enable this council's decisions to be those that contribute to the true welfare and betterment of our community. I'd like to start this afternoon by acknowledging the traditional custodians and lawmakers of this land, their elders past and present, and welcome any descendants here today. I'd like to advise that this council meeting is recorded and live streamed, with the exception of confidential matters. This includes the public participation sections of meetings. The live stream recording of this afternoon's meeting will be available on the website as soon as practicable. By participating in planning committee meetings, individuals consent to the use and disclosure of the information they share at the meeting, including any personal and/or sensitive information. Please note that other than an official council recording, no video or audio recording of proceedings is permitted. So I note that Councillor Hart is an apology for today, and we have Councillor Arnott joining us online. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest, please? Councillor Finnegan.
I have a conflict in relation to item 8.3. It's a material conflict. One of the objectors is the mother of 4 of my siblings and the ex-wife of my stepfather, so I'll be stepping out of the room for that one.
Thanks very much for advising us of that. Nobody else? Councillors, I propose that we confirm the minutes from the Planning Committee meeting held on the 11th of October 2023. Do I have a mover? Thanks, Councillor Finnegan. Is there a seconder? Thanks, Councillor Costin. Is to be opposed? Councillors will put that to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. That motion is carried 6-0. We now move on to verbal submissions from applicants and objectors. Verbal submissions from those applicants and objectors who have confirmed in writing that they wish to speak to their submission will be heard prior to the consideration of the agenda item. A limit of 5 minutes each will apply to each submitter. Item 8.1, Main Street, Birregurra, retrospective use of land for place of assembly and accommodation and waiver of car parking spaces. The purpose of this item is to hear verbal submissions from the applicant and objectors about a planning application for the use of land at 71 to 75 Main Street, Birregurra as a place of assembly and for accommodation. The application will be considered by the Planning Committee or Council at a future meeting as there are 5 outstanding objections. Verbal submissions, we have none from the objectors. We have 2 people in support and the applicant, Mr Osborne-Smith. So can I ask Peter or Helen, or both, if you're both going to speak, if you can step up to the microphone there and just state your name and then commence your submission, please.
Yeah, my name's Peter Rayner. We run a cafe in Birregurra next door to where Mella's proposal. I want to give our support for the simple reason is we're only a very small town, and occasions when he has functions on in there, such as weddings, it brings a lot of money into our little town, and a lot of us little businesses rely on that money coming into the town. It is a commercial strip, and we expect it to stay that way. Thank you.
Thank you. Helen, are you saying anything, or are you right with what Peter said?
Helen Bollenhagen. Basically very similar, but I do feel that without the help of growing the town as we need it to be grown, as relying a lot on Melbourne people to come in, or travellers, I feel that if we start closing down those that are actually at the forefront of promoting the town, that the town will dry up and die. We have only a few places for these types of functions or bringing people into the town, and it's just another way of introducing growth. Thank you.
Thank you. Stay there for a moment. You're happy if councillors have any questions of you to take questions?
Definitely.
I'm not saying they do have, but...
Yep.
Yeah. Are there any questions? No, thanks, Helen.
Right.
Mr Osborne-Smith, please.
Hello, councillors, and thank you for the opportunity to make a few words today. I'll try to keep my submission as brief as possible. I appreciate time is of the essence. So I'd like to cut straight to the chase about responding to the objectors' concerns about this application. There are three major areas of objection: music and noise, car parking and management. If I could ask someone please to put up the PowerPoint that I've presented or prepared for this presentation.
Councillors do have, that has been circulated to councillors.
I just wanted to flip through those slides. So
And you do only have 5 minutes.
I understand that.
Righto.
Is it not possible to see it on the screen?
No, we're not set up for that, I'm sorry,
Okay.
but councillors could possibly find them, but that'll wait into your time while we're doing
No,
that.
that's okay. All right. Well, the first page is a slide about music and noise. I wanted to acknowledge that music can be disruptive and intrusive and is not always appreciated by some people. I'm not sure, though, to run an event such as a wedding, it's possible to do that without music. So I just have to acknowledge that that's one of the outcomes of an event like this. However, there's about 8 things that I would like to offer to try to help reduce the impact of music and noise for events at Bootmakers. The first is music off by 11 p.m. sharp. So that's consistent, I believe, with residential party noise and EPA guidelines. The second thing on the next slide that I've prepared is to limit the events to only 10 per year. So I understand that it's possible under this zone to have an unlimited number of events to a certain noise level, up to 6 concerts, but I don't believe that's reasonable nor even viable. But my original application was 20 a year. I've reduced that to 15 and then to 12, and now I'm prepared to limit it to 10. So I hope that's a small measure to try to address the fact that when there is noise, at least it's not particularly often. The third thing I propose is to notify the town and anyone who's interested of upcoming events. So the thing about weddings is, of course, they have a very long lead time, usually 12 or 18 months, which makes it easily possible to notify whoever's interested about events coming up so that they may choose to make alternative arrangements if they don't want to be in the area. The fourth thing I can help to do to reduce the impact of music and noise is to notify our local police, Josh Goonan, up at Birregurra. He's always aware of an event, and I think it's important to reiterate that to the guests as well, that the local police are aware of the event that evening. There's also an opportunity to register the events on the VicSafe website. So there's some measures we can take as well. The fifth thing I would propose is some noise amelioration measures. I'm sure council planners will address that well, I hope, in any conditions, but they are some physical things like acoustic screens, a direction of speakers, etc. The sixth thing I can do to help reduce the impact of music and noise is signage for guests. Simple warning signs about quiet zones to keep music and noise and chatter within the boundaries of the property, not to spill out onto the street, etc. The seventh thing I can do to help reduce the impact of music and noise is a guest information handout, which has already been prepared. It's something that I require all guests to submit to all of their all hosts to submit to all of their guests, and it covers a bunch of things which include car parking locations, accommodation in the area, but importantly reminds all guests about the rules about noise and music. So it's not just the hosts that are aware that the party needs to finish, it's everyone who's attending, and that's a simple requirement I insist on, or would insist on, for any event at Bootmakers. The eighth thing I can do, and I think this is an important one from my perspective personally, is to try to support the Birregurra community beyond the businesses that Helen and Peter have spoken of, but to the community more generally. So I'm proposing an annual grant of $2,500 or $250 per event to be donated to any community group as appropriate. I'm suggesting perhaps the Birregurra Action Group could be responsible for perhaps allocating that to share it around. It's not a huge amount of money, but $2,500 helps, you know, the football club buy a fridge, or the land care group buy some plastic for their trees, etc. So it's a small gesture, but it's something I would be very proud to do, and recognise that music can affect some people more than others who may not have a business in the street.
Thank you. You've done really, really well, and I know you want a bit more time, but I can assure you, as happens with the objectors, councillors get all the material and do study it. If councillors have any questions of you, are you happy to take questions?
I'm out of my time, am I?
Yep.
I wanted to raise a few more things. Okay, sure. Please, if there's any questions.
Yeah, Councillor Finnegan has a question.
Thank you very much for your submission in support of your application, and you know, I appreciate hearing from applicants and objectors in forums such as this. Just in relation to noise amelioration and the like, are you able to give details around the speaker systems and the like that are being used? Are they being provided in-house, or are you requiring musical artists or the like to provide those themselves?
There are some existing speakers in the house. They're just standalone hanging speakers. I'm not sure of the technical requirements. There's no amp or anything. They're just a speaker connected to a USB stick. So most guests are happy to use those. If there's an artist or a guitarist or something that come in, often they prefer to bring their own, you know, because they know how it all plugs in, etc. So that's typically the way I would propose it works. Yeah.
I guess as someone with a background in audio and the like, and as a professional musician myself, I'd probably, I guess I'd ask, would you consider perhaps employing an audio consultant or something to take mapping of the space to take into account the effects of the noise on the surrounding streetscape, and then also at the time be able to recommend a particular audio system that would work within the parameters of what you're looking to achieve? So, for example, around noise requirements, direction of the speakers, so they can't be, for example, moved and pointed towards other people or neighbouring properties or anything like that to increase noise one way or the other. Is that something you...
I believe many of those good points you've raised have already been addressed in the professional acoustic report that was done. Measurements were taken, directional measurements were taken, speakers were looked at, the direction of the speakers were looked at, measurement suggestions were made about, you know, noise levels, EPA guidelines were checked against. So I think there's some good points raised in that, but I would like to think that the professional acoustic consultant that I've already engaged has, I hope, addressed most of those. So, yeah.
No, I appreciate that, and I wanted to bring that up for
I
the
think
benefit of those in the room as well. So,
thank you. Yes, it was an important part of the assessment process, of course. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions, councillors? Councillor Hanson.
Thank you for your submission. I just wondered whether you could briefly explain how you're going to direct people who attend the venue to park, you know, where you'd like them to park and not, you know, in the local streets.
Yeah, it's a good question. There's a number of methods we can do that. The first that I mentioned is the guest information sheet, if you like, which would set out, and I've got an example here, it's probably on the PowerPoint if you want to flip to it, but it sets up a number of zones. In consultation with the infrastructure group at council, we've confined those zones to commercial streets, main roads and non-residential streets, and that's where the car parking number was determined from, and the utilisation rate of those zones. So I guess to answer your question, it would be a very simple map identifying which zones guests should park in, and being very clear, particularly at the back, that Jenner Street, which is a residential, well, it's part commercial with part residential street. Austin Street to the west are simply off limits. So that would be my proposal. I'd like to just quickly point out though that I think a waiver has been sought for, not exactly sure how many car parks, 36 or thereabouts. Most of these functions are modest in size. We're not talking, you know, rock at the falls kind of numbers. We're not talking hundreds and hundreds of cars like the Birregurra Festival. We're talking 40, 50, 60, 70 people, often coming as couples or groups, and usually staying in town. So there's about 25 Airbnbs in Birregurra now. When we have a party or a wedding at Bootmakers, we book the town out, pleasingly for all of those accommodation providers. But most of our guests walk, with good reason. You know, you don't want to drive after a few drinks. So I think the concern, if there is any, about car parking is, I would like to suggest, modest. The number of cars that really turn up at the venue are not huge in number, and I think can be accommodated in zones that are outside the residential area and certainly not outside shops and the like that might use them. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor White.
Thank you. And thanks for the PowerPoint. It's pretty impressive, really. I just want to ask you, you've reduced from 20 to 10, which is a pretty significant reduction in your application. Is there anything in the back of your mind that we'll go with 10, see how it goes, and is there room to increase that number, or you?
Well, it's a new and evolving business, so I don't really know how it will go. I know there is some good demand from inquiries, etc. So I would think 10's reasonable. I guess beyond, I don't really want any more than that in terms of it's just a little cottage, and I don't want to turn it into a function centre. The only perhaps caveat on that might be something like the Birregurra Festival, which is an annual thing, and Vicky Jeffries likes to use the courtyard because it's considered a bit of a community space. So whether I have to apply for a separate permit for that, or if there's a music concert or a recital or something like that. I'm working with the arts group in Birregurra, and there's some good interest to do, guitar recitals and things like that. So it may be that if that ever comes to anything, there might be the opportunity to consider that in the future, but for the moment, I'm more than happy with 10. Well, I'm prepared to accept 10 as, I think, a reasonable compromise to try to strike a balance between my property and concerns of neighbours.
Thank you. Any other questions, councillors? Thanks for your presentation.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Councillors, any questions of officers? No questions. Councillors, the officers have provided a recommendation with a report for our consideration. Does any councillor wish to move a motion? Thanks, Councillor White. Is there a seconder, please? Thanks, Councillor Hanson. To be opposed, Councillor White.
Just very quickly to say thank you again for your presentation. It's very comprehensive and gives us a really good idea of what you're proposing, and to thank you for your submission.
Councillor Hanson? No. Councillors, I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? It's carried 6-0. Item 8.2, 9 Dennis Street, Colac, proposed hotel and other uses. Purposes of this item is to hear verbal submissions from the applicant and objectors about a planning application for the construction of a 3-storey mixed-use building with basement parking at 9 Dennis Street, Colac. We have a number of objectors and people representing the applicant to speak. Can I first ask Kevin Whitehead, if you'd like to step forward? Jenny.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jenny Keast, and my brother Kevin are here representing my mum and dad, Don and Jean Whitehead of 22 Manifold Street. Their property is directly behind and joining the proposed development. First and foremost, I would like to emphasise that we have nothing against progress or development in Colac. However, the development poses construction impacts and design features which will personally and financially impact on them, and on the basis object to the development proceeding in this current form. We would like to express our concern that this meeting has been calendared a day after the consultation meeting with the applicant, which was only last night, or yesterday afternoon. We understand why this has happened, that was explained to us, but this gives us very little time to prepare for this meeting after the discussion with the applicant. This meeting was promising in some aspects, which was great, but the full report of what they will propose will not be available for a number of weeks. We did get an email where they have proposed things that they are going to look at today, so which was great. I know you have given a copy of our objections, you've all received that. These include the privacy, the shade overlay, noise, disturbance, which could be during the construction and once the building is occupied, structural implication, dust and air quality, security and decrease in value of the property. Two items that we didn't get to cover yesterday is there was no information made available on the fire rating or report and the position of the plant or pumps for the air conditioning. This concerned us with the air conditioning if they were outside, and especially on that back area. My parents would put up with that noise continuous all the time with any air conditioning and heating that was running. Also, parking is also a concern, as there does not appear to be enough all-day parking available around the development proximity. We are concerned that Manifold Street will become the overflow for the all-day parking. Manifold Street does not have a very wide bitumen road, and if there are cars parked on both sides of the road, it'd be very difficult for both cars to be able to pass each other down that bitumen area. And we'd invite the council members to perhaps go and have an inspection of this area and see what I mean. And perhaps, I don't know if it's a solution or not, a parking time limit might prevent some of this all-day parking in that area that we're concerned with. This development has the potential to decrease property values for existing residents. If the proposed development does not align with the established character of the neighbourhood or does create undesirable living conditions, it will have a negative impact on the value of the adjoining properties, such as my mum and dad's. This would not only affect house owners, but also the impact, the local economy and future investment in their neighbourhood. A decrease in property value could also be due to the public not being aware of what this development will entail before, during and after the construction. Thank you for listening to our objections and concerns.
Thanks, Jenny. You're happy to take questions
Yes,
from
I am.
councillors if
Yes.
there are any? I'm not sure if there are. Any questions, councillors? No. Thanks, Jenny.
Thank you very much.
Grant Brower, please.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. Firstly, I'd like to reiterate the points that I made in my original objection on similar topics that Jenny has already mentioned. Privacy, noise. I felt there remains some ambiguity and uncertainty regarding the proposed use of the function room and how this is going to impact on the output of noise. In any case, I feel the proximity to our residents and other residents in Manifold Street would likely make for an unreasonable amount of noise pollution. Security, the possible impact of the structural integrity of surrounding houses, especially those in Manifold Street. The visual impact of the proposed development on the aesthetics and character of the town. The size and scale of this development and its imposing presence in a central location, I don't feel is in keeping with the character of the neighbourhood or the town as a whole. I believe it would destroy the aesthetic appeal of our town, and that's something I'm not very keen on. The impact of the vertical garden on the adjoining residents' yards. I know and I acknowledge that we had the opportunity to speak yesterday and raise our concerns to the applicant, which I appreciate, but until something is provided in a more formal amendment from the applicant, that we can take some time to assess, my objections on these grounds still stand. I want to talk a little bit more about parking. Jenny touched on parking. I feel that the initial traffic survey and report by Traffics does not go into sufficient detail around how the proposed development will impact on traffic in the area surrounding 9 Dennis Street. I feel the report has made inadequate assumptions around available parking and possibly as to the number of parks this development may require at any one time. It has not taken into consideration the number of cars that currently use 9 Dennis Street on a daily basis, the number of cars that encroach into the survey area should there be a large funeral in progress at Quinn's, other large events at Memorial Square, or increased traffic load generally in the lead up to holidays and long weekends. I've completed my own traffic surveys and I believe that I can demonstrate that the development would likely leave the town with a deficit of all-day and unrestricted parking spaces in the survey area. I would be happy to share my parking statistics with councillors to illustrate my points of concern, and will be quite happy to discuss this further in greater detail. This then raises concerns over whether people will seek to use long-term parking options in Manifold Street or other nearby residential streets, which in my opinion is unfair to the residents and also poses issues of wear and tear on streets which are only designed for residential traffic. Lack of parking options also has me concerned over the safety of pedestrians and cyclists, especially along the north side of Dennis Street. It will impact business owners, consumers and those wishing to access essential services such as Bowen Health's mental services and the Salvation Army building. On this evidence, I believe that the application for reduced parking should be denied. I would also like to voice my disappointment over the lack of public consultation that has taken place. This proposal has the potential to impact on all residents and ratepayers of the Colac Otway Shire, but apart from the adjoining residents who were notified in writing and one article in the Colac Herald, there has been little public consultation or engagement. I, along with other residents, feel as though this process has been rushed and inadequate considering the relative magnitude of this development against the size of existing buildings, its proximity to residences, and its impact on the character and aesthetics of the neighbourhood and the town as a whole. There needs to be greater time provided to consider any alterations to the plans as they arise. I believe that this application deserves far greater community engagement, scrutiny and further public comment before it goes to the Planning Committee meeting on the 6th of December, and I believe that the date for this should be pushed back. Thank you for allowing me to speak, and I too would echo Jenny's comments and invite you to do a site inspection of 9 Dennis Street.
Thank you, Grant. And if you have things you wish to share with councillors, you can do that through our email address. We're
Yep.
certainly welcome to have a look at that.
Yeah.
Are there any questions? Councillor Costin.
Grant, thanks for your submission.
Thank you.
I'm looking through your written submission here and I notice you've raised concerns about the structural integrity of your house and potential impact of the works next door.
Yes.
And you've asked for a report. Can you explain what you're looking for there?
Yeah, so this was covered yesterday in the meeting we had with the applicants. I believe it's something called a dilapidation report that would need to be provided before any works commence. Like we do have concerns about how drilling and excavation works, especially for the underground car park, would impact on buildings that close to the site. So there are 3 buildings that back onto the site. There's a 2 metre leeway between the wall and the back fence, the adjoining fence. You know, and we live in predominantly century-old weatherboard houses. So I think we have fair cause for concern regarding how construction of this size may impact on buildings and their structural integrity. No worries.
Any other questions, councillors? No worries. Thanks, Grant.
Good on you.
Simon or Claire?
Good
Good afternoon, councillors. I think that was for tracked consultants, was it, councillor? Might be different.
Yes. Yep. No. Sorry,
I
Tim.
thought there might have been objectors.
Yes, come up, Tim. Sorry. Fancy overlooking you. You'll make me pay
We
for
don't
it.
want that to happen, do we, Chris? Firstly, thanks, councillors, for your time today. I'll be a little bit, I suppose, off the cuff with what I want to talk about, but I echo Jenny and Grant. I'm a passionate Colacian and have been all my life. I've resided at 16 Manifold Street with my wife for over 20 years, and I suppose my attraction to the street, that it's an iconic street in Colac, right? We're a block and a half from the main street. We've got, I think, the desert ash trees lining it. We've got bluestone culverts. I think part of the street itself is heritage listed, not our houses, but the street itself. That's what attracted me to that spot in town. And I think the development is, or I believe personally, is going to take away from that street aesthetics and the streets. You know, you look at Manifold Street, your Calvert Streets. These are iconic streets between the lake and the CBD of Colac, and have been like that for over 100 years. So I really do believe the size of the building, being over 11 metres high, is going to change the aesthetics of that street and that iconic street. So that's the passionate, I suppose, residential owner that I am, and I wanted to convey that when the councillors are making that decision, that they know they're going to change that aesthetics of that street. So through my written proposal or objection, I talked about the size of the building, so I think I've covered it. 11 metres high, part of the building will overlook my backyard, and in the initial submission there was nothing covering guys from the balcony on the west side looking into mine. I don't adjoin directly behind, but I sit to the northwest, and they'll certainly be able to view into my backyard. I've got young children, which is concerning. I do understand that I do back onto a commercially zoned area, so I do acknowledge that, but at 11 metres high, you can look into any backyard in that street. The other part being the function room and the terrace. I know there's an acoustic report completed with the initial application by the applicants. It talked about a function room acoustic report with doors closed. There's a terrace out the front. Even though Colac's weather is very unpredictable, I would have thought if you hire out the function room, you want to use a terrace. So there's no coverage there of the noise levels. I think from boundary to boundary, I'm about 25 metres. I can tell you now, there's at least six to eight other function or live music venues in town in the CBD that other residents can access, and one neighbouring, one on Murray Street. You know, when the doors are open on the smoking area, I can tell you who's kissing who and who's taking home who. So to be, 4 times closer to my back fence, I think that's unreasonable without the appropriate testing there to make a decision on it. I do acknowledge we spoke yesterday and want to reiterate the timeframes between the meetings. I've just got to discount what we spoke about yesterday because there's no time to respond from either party. So yeah, just I suppose the parking as well. We run a business from our house. We've got permits in place. We've got parking permits in place, but there's, I drove past half an hour ago. There's 10 cars in that car park or on the block at the moment. They park, they fill up the street. So where's the overflow? The other 20, I think they're about 66% or 60 odd percent of parking. 40, they need 60, they've got 40. So where's this overflow going to come from? And it's going to affect our business, where we reside. So I hope councillors take all that informed information, as well as reiterating other objectives, being Grant Brewer and also Jenny, how they've spoke today about their concerns as well. But that's about it.
Thanks, Tim. You happy to take questions?
Yeah, happy to take
Thank you. Councillor Finnegan.
Thanks for your submission, Tim. It's much appreciated. I guess what I'd like to ask, from the stance of yourself being so close, what, aside from what was proposed in the consultation meeting yesterday and what has been emailed out, and I know that you didn't really want to go into that, but what would mitigate what do you feel would mitigate some of the concerns that you have if the development was to be approved and go ahead? What would you like to see change?
I think we need better accommodation in Colac. We've got motor inns, right? Trying to staff, I'm a regional manager in my role, getting executives to stay in Colac is pretty tricky when they're throwing them at the Baronga, right? Nothing against the Baronga, but it's basic accommodation. So I think there is room for accommodation. A 3-storey building with a function room on top of it, no. I think if you had a 2-storey building with 20 rooms, I can't speak for the other objectors, but I know there would not be as much noise around something a smaller size that still fits the need of Colac from an accommodation perspective.
Thanks, Tim. Any other questions? Thank you. Thanks. Tract, someone representing them?
Thank you, councillors. My name is Simon Loader. I'm a senior principal with Tract Consultants. We're the planning consultant acting on behalf of the applicant. Just before I start, I believe that Darryl Pelkin, the architect, might also be registered to speak, or is he part of our 5 minutes?
No, I have him on the list,
Great.
Simon,
Right.
so you've got 5 minutes.
The architecture to you, Darryl. I just wanted to cover off on, I guess, a couple of key themes. The first is, what's this project all about? This is a corporate office and co-working space that offers accommodation to key workers and business people with a range of suitable amenities, including cafe, gym and a function space. We appreciate the discussion we got to have with the objectors just yesterday afternoon, and I think it's been clear tonight as well that the function centre is a major piece that gives them concern, and we completely understand that. The function space is really conceived to be sophisticated and laid back, dare I say, wine bar style offering with live acoustic music. It's not intended or proposed to be anything akin to a bar or a nightclub, and we would understand the residents' concerns if that were the case. One of the commitments we did make yesterday was that we would amend our noise report to wind back the level of music from amplified live music to live acoustic music, which really brings down the noise levels. And we also committed to remodelling the proposal with the function doors open, again based on some of the commentary from the objectors yesterday. What does this proposal mean for Colac and how does it meet policy? Well, look, we clearly think this is a positive contribution to Colac. It's a use and development for a mixed-use commercial building that's consistent with council policy, introduces a positive design contribution to the CBD area, and it's highly consistent with policy as well in terms of trying to generate new economic development, drive jobs, and really offer, as was just sort of attested to, really filling a gap in the market from an accommodation perspective. We wanted to touch on amenity impacts because we think that that's clearly where the tension with this proposal arises at the moment. The building has really been designed to face the east and the west. There are no windows proposed to the northern boundary. We appreciate that's the most sensitive interface for our neighbours. And again, yesterday we committed to doing further work around screening of the balconies for the hotel rooms, and we've committed to come back on that as well. There's not going to be any overshadowing from this building, given we're located to the south of the residential buildings, and as councillors are probably aware, commercial buildings to the east and the west aren't to be impacted by overshadowing issues. We've really thought about how we program the site in terms of layout. We've sought to deliver really meaningful landscaping buffers along the east, west and northern boundaries of the site. We've also committed to the objectors or the submitters yesterday afternoon that we'll work with them around the selection of tree species, making sure that they're evergreen, not deciduous, and they maintain that screening effect throughout the year. Car parking is clearly another thing that has been raised throughout this process, and I'll just want to work through this really simply around what is actually proposed, because the traffic report is somewhat technical. We have a basement car park that provides 41 spaces. There's a statutory demand for 64 spaces for the uses proposed. The basement will provide secure car parking available only to staff of the businesses and visitors to the hotel. The traffic report includes an occupancy assessment that identifies the on-street car parking in the area has a maximum occupancy rate of 60% both on the weekend and the weekdays, which suggests that there is some latent capacity within the on-street car parking network. The view of our expert traffic engineer is that based on the parking demand assessment, secure on-site car parking will sufficiently suit staff and visitors, and that the patrons, the visitors, who are going to be the more short-term visitors to this project, including the medical centre, the cafe, the hotel function room, will generate anywhere between 7 and 18 space demand for on-street car parking. There's been a bit made about where that parking is going to have to be accommodated, and there's a suggestion it'll happen in Manifold Street, and we can't testify to the fact that it won't, but it's also not an absolute certainty that it will. There's available parking all throughout the CBD, some timed, some untimed, and we submit that there's ample parking within the network to accommodate this proposal. Just finally wanted to touch on the commitments that we made to the objectors yesterday afternoon, some of which I've already touched on: privacy screening to the balconies, the updated acoustic report. We've also committed to delivering new boundary fencing to be constructed at the cost of the permit applicant, with the height and the material of that fence to be agreed with the neighbours. Landscaping will be maintained via an irrigation system, and there'll be an ongoing management strategy for that to ensure that the screening that's really integral to this building is maintained in perpetuity. We've committed to giving a perspective view of the building from the Manifold Street properties. We've also committed to the provision of a secure side gate to ensure that the general public can't access the rear of the building. We rightly understand that residents are concerned about the general public being able to get down and access their rear fences, which is fair enough.
Sorry, Simon. I've got to be pretty strict on time. We've got a few others to deal with yet.
Anyway, so thank you. I appreciate
thank you.
it.
Councillors, any questions of Simon? Councillor Finnegan.
Thanks for your submission, Simon. You've touched on a few things, particularly around the idea of the function room like being somewhat of having a wine bar vibe to it.
Sure.
And I'd probably say that as someone who's, don't mean to sound like I'm a connoisseur of alcohol or wine by any means, but as someone who's frequented and worked in such establishments, I presume you are aware that those sorts of establishments do get quite loud, particularly the outdoor areas, yes?
Yes, of course.
And I guess a following question would be regarding the soundproofing of the terraced area. Would there be scope for the applicant to perhaps look into if this, as part of the process and in the idea of appeasing those on Manifold Street and the like who are objecting, of sort of firmly trying as best as possible to soundproof the entrance to that terrace, so whether it be having a sort of airlock or something with a firm door then through there into the glass-fronted terrace, and requiring those who are utilising that area to basically keep their voices down the like?
Oh, look, there's a whole range of management strategies, Councillor, that can be employed. The current noise report recommends that the sliding doors be closed at a certain period of the day, generally after 10 p.m. They've also recommended that the general access door that will allow patrons to still access the terrace be an automatic closing door. These are, typical provisions that work with many establishments, but I think, needless to say, our client's willing and open to consider any range of management strategies to achieve that. And I think the main thing that we would flag is we're trying to convey that this isn't meant to be some sort of rowdy hoo-ha kind of space. It's very much meant to be a quiet space for people who are visiting the hotel to enjoy a drink.
Got a follow-up question?
Yes, I do. And
Councillor Hanson has a question too.
Yes, I guess this is just one question, but I actually used to live at 15 Dennis Street, so next to where Barwon Mental Health is, yep. And like the Follies on a Saturday night, I could hear pretty much everything going on at the nightclub above the Austral Hotel on the corner of Murray Street and Corangamite Street, and that was something that I was aware of when I moved in there. It was something I was willing to put up with. But you did mention that you want to scale things back from having, amplified music and the like to just having live acoustic music. And I'm just wanting to clarify here, because sometimes, again, being a musician, sometimes people think that just having an acoustic musician will be much quieter. Are you suggesting that there will be no use of any PAs or anything within the facility, or will you be having people playing acoustic guitar and the like through a PA that's just going to be amplified anyway and still having impacts on the neighbouring residents. So I just want to...
Yep, no, it's a
Sort that
fair
out
question, Councillor. Very technical and a fair place to go. If councillors have the opportunity to read through even the existing noise report that's been submitted, you'll see probably midway through the report, there's a section that breaks down the 4 categories of live music from an acoustic engineering perspective. What we've committed to is reducing it from the live amplified music to live acoustic music. That's not to say there won't be PAs, but there are other measures that could be adopted, including noise limiters, which are again very common pieces of technology in function spaces, to make sure that regardless of whether you're playing acoustics or whether you're playing a DJ set, the limiter can make sure that it's always at the same acceptable level to maintain amenity.
I would also hazard that, and probably more, you are aware that limiters can be bypassed by musicians and the like.
I'm not a noise expert, councillor, but I know that technology is fallible to all humans.
Yeah, just assuring you that certainly musicians, if they want to bypass a limiter, definitely can, and it doesn't take a lot of know-how. So I just wanted to bring that up. And I would state that probably, and it's good that we've had this conversation, because I guess it highlights to those in the room the like that just because you're saying acoustic music, it doesn't necessarily mean no amplification at all. So I just wanted to get that out there.
Would just clarify, councillor, that the reason we highlight it is that typically from an acoustic engineering perspective, it does generate a lower decibel rating than live DJ music, according to our noise consultant.
Oh, and of course, but obviously to the layman, a lot of people hear acoustic and they presume no amplification at all. So,
of course.
And that's why I'm just
Understand.
teasing out the point. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hanson.
Thanks for your submission, Simon. It was raised earlier about concerns about noise from air conditioning and heating units. How do you propose to mitigate that?
Yeah, again, this is dealt with in the noise report submitted with the application. The building's been designed to contain all the plant equipment within the basement, so other proposals might suggest that they're external or even on the roof. This is proposed to be in the basement, and our acoustic engineer has given recommendations of a series of strategies to ensure that that's appropriately acoustically baffled so it doesn't create nuisance.
Thank you. Councillor Costin.
Thanks, Simon. I had a question about overlooking, but just first on the air conditioning unit, so that's all in the basement, and there'll be some venting. Which way does that venting head? Where is that directed to?
I might have to leave that question to the architect,
Yep.
Darryl, who's probably going to speak next. You might be able to
Fine.
detail that better.
And a number of objectors have raised the issue of overlooking. Do you want to leave that to the architect as well? Or?
Look, he can probably touch on it as well, but certainly that was a key point of discussion yesterday, and we've committed to introducing some overlooking screens to the balconies of the hotel rooms.
So you've talked about reliance on vegetation or trees or whatever. There is also some structural measures?
Yeah, certainly structural measures. So I think the landscaping is twofold. That provides a level of privacy, but that's really more about softening of the building appearance for the neighbours. Really, the screens have a lot more longevity and surety in terms of providing or preventing overlooking.
Thank you.
Councillor White.
Thank you. I think a number of the objectors talked about the impact of construction on their older heritage weatherboard houses, and I'm just wondering what plans you've got around that and how you'll work with the residents around that, because that's a pretty concerning issue.
Certainly. Again, this was discussed yesterday, and the commitment was made that it's a very typical process during the building permit stage of any development that dilapidation reports will be undertaken for nearby buildings, and we've committed to doing that with the neighbours. What I would say is that basement construction and that type of construction nearby older buildings happens every day across our state and country, and they're not, while they might be new construction methods that happen here in Colac, they're very well understood, and they'll be supported by a series of geotechnical studies, structural studies, and all manner of things that validate that it's going to be delivered appropriately. We've been working with Spence Construction, who are obviously a local business, and they're the committed builder for this, and I think many in the community will know the quality of Spence's work, so we've got full faith that can be easily addressed through the building permit stage, and it's not that we are deferring that matter to a building permit stage for any other reason than that's the typical point at which it's done.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thanks, Simon. You're the only one from Tract?
Just me.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you. Darryl Pelton.
Firstly, thanks, councillors. My name's Darryl Pelkin. I'm one of the architects involved with the project. There's only a few things I would really like to emphasise today that possibly haven't been picked up. The first is, whilst not being at all dismissive of other points of view, planning is primarily charged with managing change. This building, as a minimum, will have a 50-year life. So in many ways, I'm talking about a building that is going to live a long time should be approved in Colac, and I'm really representing people that aren't in this room. The first point I would make is the ambition for this building is significant. This is to be a town asset. This is to belong to Colac. This is to be delivered by Colac people for Colac. It is providing facilities that currently don't exist in Colac. And to our knowledge, it'll be the first building to have a basement car park, which is an incredibly expensive option compared to at-grade car parking, but a clear demonstration that the proponents for this building have a high ambition, a serious commitment to providing a facility that currently doesn't exist in Colac. It is a corporate building. It is to tell the story of Colac. It is a building to actually promote what this town does. A simple illustration is it has a timber fenestration or a timber screen fronting Dennis Street. This building is orientated to Dennis Street, not to the north, and the tension point is only because we have a commercial zoning interfacing with a residential zoning. I again am not dismissive about any alternative view with a residential setting to the north. Fortunately, we are to the south. But the timber screen and the orientation, the activation to Dennis Street is saying this building talks to Dennis Street, not to Manifold Street. The timber screen will tell the story of Colac, its reliance on timber, the history of this place, and it will do it time and time again through the building. So whether it's hot desking, whether it's civic spaces, whether it is the building's uses that are all aligned and all to serve this town in a corporate way, a way that doesn't currently exist. It is here for the people of Colac, and whilst there can be a differing view about the aesthetics or the merits of this building, I'm a long-standing architect with some reputation. It serves no purpose for me or our practice to promote a building that is anything other than exemplar. And this building will talk to how we do things, not how we have done things. It'll have an ESD ambition, an energy ambition that currently doesn't exist in our view in Colac. It'll have provision for electric car parking. It'll do all sorts of things in a cycling space that don't exist in Colac. It is a building for Colac to be proud of. It is literally to propel Colac for the next 10, 15, 20 years to a place it could not otherwise get because it is serving a corporate undertaking, a corporate need that is not here at the moment. To go directly to the concerns about the ventilation or the noise generated by plant and equipment, this building is a passive building, which means it is naturally ventilated. It has a 10-metre penetration depth for natural daylight from an external wall to a floor space. It's all adopting strong environmentally sustainable design principles. It means where we do have mechanical plant, it is concealed, it's discreet, and it breathes east or west, not north or south. If there are other issues or concerns about our commitment, I'm here to allay them. This building is to look after your children. It is to look after your grandchildren. It is here to literally talk to where Colac wants to go. And that is the overriding ambition, the aspiration for what we seek to do.
Thanks, Darryl. Councillor, is there any questions of Darryl? Councillor Costin.
Thanks, Darryl. I'm interested in the interface at the north, on the north wall, will there be any service infrastructure on that north wall? How will that north wall talk to the residents who have to look at it every day? Have you given consideration to having some sort of other softening of that wall, whether to lessen the visual impact, to lessen the concern? And I just don't understand what that will look like.
So, Councillor, the view is that that is clearly the sensitive interface for really everybody in the room. We have tried to design a response which means that we don't look north at all, and we're here to give an assurance that we'll be looking east or west and south, not looking north into the neighbouring residential properties, and we need to prove that with screening devices and also with an invitation for those occupants to actually visit the building and stand in the building so that the perception is real, that they are not overlooked. What that means in terms of the north wall, we would like a vertical green garden on that wall, which will be maintained by the body corporate. It will be a reticulated item on the building. We need to understand what an expectation would be reasonably in terms of a commercial zoning. We have elected not to build on that boundary. We have elected to soften that interface. The degree of softening can be debated, but there is a landscape element that will sit between our north edge of the building and our northern boundary, and that is deliberately to try and lessen our visual impact. I will also say, and this is not to sound inflammatory, it is simply to say what exists at the moment. There are outbuildings and garages in some locations on the southern boundary of the neighbours to the north. Whilst we're not reliant on that, we are clearly trying to lessen our impact by screening and landscaping primarily. We have offered to raise the fence height at the applicant's cost. That can be determined collegiately with the immediate neighbours to try and assist, again, that interface. But at some point, Councillor, there is a decision to be made. It's a decision between what is the appropriate answer between a commercial and a residential interface. We believe strongly that we are being responsible, and on balance, we're providing softening or a lessening of the amenity impacts that would otherwise occur given the difference in the zoning settings.
Thanks, Daryl. So is there any service infrastructure at all facing out of the north wall? And no. I'm interested in this green garden aspect and the sustainability of it also.
Okay, so the short answer is no, and we're happy for that to be written in any control, that there is to be no service provision on that north face or that interface. We're acknowledging openly that that is the sensitive interface for the adjoining property owners, the residential owners. The servicing or maintenance of that green wall is a pretty proven device now. There are any number of green walls that we do primarily in Melbourne. They're maintained by a watering system, and the plant selection is designed to be robust. So it has its own soil bed. It's nominated at a metre on the drawing, and it will provide what we say is a green wall with the correct landscape selection and landscape input from the landscape architects.
Thanks, Daryl. Thank you.
Councillor Finnegan.
Thank you very much. And I appreciate your submission. I guess you made the assertion that this will be a town asset and it will belong to Colac, but the reality is that this hotel is going to be privately owned, privately managed, yes?
Its ownership's not decided in terms of how it sits. All I know is the applicant is a long-standing Colac business.
Well, yeah. And I guess the question is, you know, there's talk about it being a corporate building. And it makes it sound as if it's just going to be, you know, accommodation solely for people from businesses like. Does that mean, and I guess you may not have the answers yourself, does that mean it's not going to be taking, you know, bookings or anything from anyone else who aren't related to businesses, so holiday makers and the like?
No, no one can determine that. We can't prescribe answers like that. What I will say is the way that we do business, and it has shifted some way after COVID, is it quite often happens at a cafe or it happens at a wine bar. There's been a lot of discussion about the function centre. We could reference something like the European in Spring Street in Melbourne. You can sit in any number of places and watch how business is conducted. That's really the setting or the opportunity that we're trying to provide here. It's not a stiff, formal 101 office. It is to provide different ways of doing business for what we say is the next generation's expectation.
Radio. Thank you very much.
Thank you. No other questions, councillors? Thanks, Darryl. Councillors, do you have any questions of officers? No questions. The officers have provided a recommendation with a report for our consideration. Does any councillor wish to move a motion in relation to this issue, please? Thanks, Councillor Hanson. Seconded, please. Thanks, Councillor Costin. Is it to be opposed? Councillor Hanson.
I'd like to thank everybody who's made a submission, both written and verbal. And up on that screen, I am not Kate Hudson. That happens a lot, but it's just a real bugbear. Yeah, that's just a spell check. And I'll note that this is tabled to come to the December council meeting. But between now and that council meeting, if there is plenty of opportunity for people who have questions, who still want to make, who still want to have discussions with the planners, who even want to ring their councillors and air their concerns. It's not like today is the end of the process. There was a meeting yesterday. There's been some alterations, or I think it's been acknowledged that everybody at the moment is listening. The final plans haven't been lodged yet. There's still that opportunity up until this is flagged to come to the December council meeting, and officers will work through that process with objectors, with the applicant, and then at the moment it's flagged to come to the December council meeting. If that everything that needs to be lodged is lodged. So up until that point, there is still plenty of time in the process to ask questions, to raise concerns, and to keep talking. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hanson. Councillor Costin? Nothing. Councillors, I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? Thank you. That's carried 6-0. Item 8.3, Councillor Finnegan.
Do you need me to declare the conflict again? Yeah. So for item 8.3, I have a material conflict of interest. This is due to one of the objectors whose property adjoins the property we're discussing today, is the ex-wife of my stepfather and the mother of 4 of my siblings. So I'll be sitting this one out.
Thanks, Councillor Finnegan. Councillors, item 8.3, purpose of this item is to hear verbal submissions from the applicant and objectors about a planning application for the use and development of a dwelling at 765 and 792 Nellingil Road, Corunna. The application will likely be considered at the council meeting scheduled for the 22nd of November 2023, as the officer recommendation is that the application be refused, and officers do not have delegation to refuse an application for a dwelling in the farming zone. We have no submitters from objectors listed. In support, we have Bianca Moore. Is Bianca here? You are, Dean, thank you. I was looking at my list that had Bianca first and then followed by Dean. Are you wishing to speak now, Bianca, or do you... Right.
Yeah, there's several reasons why I'd love the opportunity to build out at Nellingil Road, Corunna Road, sorry. I thought the last few years, there have been some properties that have been able to go through to be able to build, even though they're less than 100 acres, and I just thought it'd be worth me having a go and submitting an application. I'm actually a teacher at Alby Primary School out there, and we're a growth school, so from the last 3 years, we've gone from 40 kids to 75 projected next year. And that 30% is considered a growth school. We are just struggling to obtain any teachers. We've got 2 positions open at the moment and we cannot get any teachers. And to me, to be able to build out there, I need to get back to that community and have the opportunity for teachers to come out and to offer some accommodation. So at the moment, we're working with Melbourne Uni and they have a 4th year program where they are the government's put a lot of money towards getting teachers out into rural schools, so we're supporting that. So that's probably my main reason, just with that community out there. I know you can't measure the community, but we need to get teachers, we need to entice it to get teachers back out into our rural schools. So that's my, at the moment, for me to be able to put up some accommodation for teachers and to elaborate that, to get rid of that problem.
Thank you. You happy to take some questions from councillors today?
Yeah.
Any questions? Councillor White.
Thank you for that. So are you proposing that you would offer accommodation to teachers when they're coming out on teaching rounds and things like that?
To do rounds. So we're thinking if we can get in there early, like 2nd and 3rd year, and get entice them, because we are just struggling, and I just hate the thought of kids missing out on having good teachers. Like, I think country kids are already at a disadvantage as opposed to your city children, but they're great kids, they're our future. So that would be, and then for us to be able to say to teachers, like, we can offer some form of accommodation for your 1st year or your 2nd year. So then, the rental crisis and things like that, they can't get accommodation. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Arnott.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a question in respect to the purpose of the house. You said it's accommodation for teachers, and thank you for that information. Are you intending this to be a primary residence for yourself or your family?
Yes, I am. At the moment, I have cattle out there, so in the report submitted, the importance of the wellbeing of cattle is important, but at the same time, the community is also important to me. So, yes, it will be my primary residence. I'm 4th generation out there, so I know the land isn't much, it's quite rocky terrain and things like that. For me, the sentimental value of, my great-grandma and things like that, plays a significant part in my decision and my wanting to be out there. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, councillors? No. Thanks, Bianca. Dean.
I printed my notes off and they're sitting in a car with a flat tyre and Warrnambool, so hopefully I can read from my phone. Good afternoon, councillors, and thank you for your time today. My name is Dean Suckling and you've been my client. We now expect every agricultural application like this to go to councillors, and that's because councillors represent their community and what's best for that community far better than any guidelines. Each farmer does deserve the respect of demonstrating how they are going to contribute to agriculture and their community. Today we ask you to assess our application for a person who lives in your community and how it will contribute to your community, not just against the policies. Our application does meet all the planning criteria. It depends on which side of the fence you put yourself. We know this because plenty of these get approved, especially as we see the inevitable trend to smaller farms as bigger farms have become unreachable for the next generation. We've been told it doesn't meet the Colac Otway Rural Land Use Strategy from 2007. I urge you to read that document carefully. It's a bit Jekyll and Hyde, torn between supporting big farms and acknowledging small farms matter. A key finding is that 60% of all farms will require an off-farm income to remain viable, which makes living on the farm imperative for time management. What wasn't addressed in 2007, where do the next generation of farmers and farm workers
come from, and where do we house them? Encouraging young people and their families onto farms has never been more important. We are running out of farmers. We are told she's pinching high-quality agricultural land. There are too many rocks for it to be considered better than Class 3 land. We had two objectors. One lives in Queensland and has sold these undersized lots themselves. The other was concerned that her residence would be visible from the site of the new dwelling. She has spent time with my client and is satisfied that that is not the case. AgVic recommended against as usual. Of the 50 or so of my plans they have assessed, they have not supported a single one. They assessed it against the planning guidelines, but not against their own farming guidelines for biosecurity, animal welfare, environmental care, or anything else. Bianca is not an out-of-town developer. She's a generational farmer who wants to farm and live on her family farm and do her best where she grew up. She wants to make sure the kids of Alby School appreciate farming and understand farming and hopefully become farmers. She wants to encourage teachers to consider coming out of the city and working in these small schools by understanding the farming lifestyle. And she assures me that once there, she never wants to leave. Excuse me, I'm getting dry. Like most farmers, Bianca's hourly pay rate on the farm will be zero. 2 to 3 times a year she will get paid when she sells stock, and what's left after bills is hers. Some years that won't be much. She may even have to use farm equity. Other years it will be very good. There is no safety net. The harder she works, thanks Ian, sorry. There is no safety net. The harder she works, the more successful she will be. That type of pay structure makes farmers diligent and want to be close to their animals. We all know why the planning rules for the farming zone are there, to stop the carve-up of large agricultural lands and to manage land use conflicts. Piggeries, dairies, spraying, odours, noise, etc., none of which happens here. The justification for a dwelling provided in the farm plan are straight from farmers and what has caused major issues on their farms. And I could fill 20 pages of what can go wrong. Single moments wrecking seasons, sometimes viability. The intimate monitoring of living on your farm reduces those risks and improves farming. I speak from heartbreaking experience there. I've been doing this a long time. I've worked with thousands of farms, big and small, and they are all worthy. I commend Bianca for improving our industry and improving her community. She is exactly the type of person who gives our industry a future, and she is correct. Farming will be better when she lives there, and the community will also be better for it. And finally, I feel I should clarify the Warrian planning situation, which keeps coming up. At no point was that application going to be used for anything other than for what it was submitted. The planning permit process was slow, and that process hurt those people a lot. It coincided with a serious illness for their daughter that required ongoing hospitalisation. I am not a gun for hire. I truly believe that my clients will make a contribution to agriculture. I've rolled in too much mud and cow shit, seen too many needlessly dead animals, and seen too many devastated farmers to give away my integrity that cheaply. Thank you.
Thanks, Dean. You happy to take questions from councillors if there are any?
Absolutely.
Sure. Councillor Costin.
Thanks, Dean. Have you prepared a farm management plan or something that looks at the financial viability of the farming operation itself, or that might give us an idea of the level of subsidy, or whether it stands alone, or the level of subsidy, off-farm subsidy required?
So there was a farm management plan submitted with the application, and it did have an indicative budget of what was on it. I apologise, I did have that printed out. I believe the revenue from the property was in the order of $45,000, of which potentially about half was going to make it. So it's a sound return for a property that size. It's not spectacular, but it's a sound return for a property that size. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No other questions? Thanks, Dean.
Thank you.
Councillors, any questions of officers? No questions? Oh, sorry, Councillor Costin.
I'm not sure whether I missed it somewhere, but have we been provided with a farm management plan?
Through you, Mayor, you haven't actually received the officer report on the application yet. It will be attached to that. So you will have it attached to the council report.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillors, the officers have provided us with a report for our consideration. Does any councillor wish to move a motion? Thanks, Councillor Costin. Is there a seconder, please? Thanks, Councillor Hanson. Sorry, Max. Kate got in. Is to be opposed? Councillor Costin.
Thank you, Mayor. Just thank you to Bianca and Dean for speaking on behalf of the application. When we receive the farm management plan, we'll look at that very closely before we make our decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hanson? No. Councillors, I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? Thank you. It's carried 5-0. Could we get Councillor Finnegan back in the room, please? Welcome back, Councillor Finnegan. Item 8.4. The purpose of this item is to hear verbal submissions from the applicant and objectors about a planning application for retail and residential development of 51 to 53 and 55 Great Ocean Road and 10 and 14 Pascoe Street in Apollo Bay. The application proposes the construction of 3 retail premises and public toilets at ground floor level with 5 apartments above the retail tenancies. The application also proposes a reduction of 20 car parking spaces from the specified parking rate, the use of part of land for the sale of packaged liquor, the display of illuminated business identification signage, and the removal of a restriction around drainage and sewerage easement. There's no objectors listed to submit to us, councillors, but in support, I have a Lee Shaw. Is Lee here?
Thank you. Good afternoon, councillors. I'm Lee Shaw. I'm a senior planner from Ratio Consultants here on behalf of the permit applicant, who is LL Architect. An introduction to this proposal, an overview has been given, but it is for 3 retail units, inclusive of a supermarket with ancillary liquor sales, 2 smaller shop units, 5 dwellings, 3 of which will be 4-bedroom units, 1 of which will be a 3-bedroom unit, and 1 2-bedroom unit. The application also comprises new public toilets, the provision of 13 car parking spaces on site, and a waiver of 20 from the statutory requirement. Signage is proposed, which is associated with the IGA supermarket, which will relocate to this site on completion of development. The design concept for the proposed building takes advantage of a rare opportunity in Apollo Bay and the consolidation of the number of lots and number of addresses. This site has 3 frontages in reality. One is to the Great Ocean Road, one is to Pascoe Street, but the third is a frontage to a shared car park that is operated by council. The design of the proposal seeks to animate all frontages, with the supermarket located towards the Great Ocean Road frontage, a secondary retail unit facing onto the car park, and a third retail unit facing towards Pascoe Street. Residential accommodation is provided above and also animates all these frontages. In terms of planning considerations, the site's within a commercial 1 zone. A key purpose of that zone is to create a mixed-use commercial centre for retail, office, business, entertainment and community uses. The site's also affected by the design and development overlay, which is the Schedule 5, which applies to the Apollo Bay Commercial Centre. The key objectives of that design and development overlay is to improve pedestrian safety and movements within and around the town centre, to ensure that new development in Apollo Bay is consistent with acts to consolidate the character of Apollo Bay as a coastal town, and to ensure that the upper levels of development are well articulated to respect the character of the area. The proposal is 3 stories towards the Great Ocean Road and drops to 2 stories within the site and towards Pascoe Street. The development is wholly compliant with the mandatory requirements of that design and development overlay, and also responds favourably to the preferred character requirements within that overlay as well. A key document in the consideration of this application is the Apollo Bay Structure Plan. That structure plan encouraging mid-block pedestrian connections, which this application creates. It creates a new footpath connecting the Great Ocean Road to Pascoe Street, and enhancing Pascoe Street, which this development does by providing those units and providing overlooking and natural surveillance from a retail unit above that unit. There are a number of facets to this application, which I'm happy to answer questions on. The main points of why I think that this application should be supported is that the development supports the role and function of Apollo Bay as a centre for living and recreation. It also increases its appeal and creates use of a vacant site that's been vacant now since the fire on the site a few years ago. The residential units to be delivered are in a mix of typologies, which supports housing diversity within the centre and within a sustainable location within the centre. And the proposal makes use it spreads activity further south into the centre. It creates that anchor supermarket further south to encourage pedestrian movement through the centre, which again is highlighted in the activity centre and the activity centre structure plan. I know that there are questions probably relating to liquor and various other things, so I think it would be more constructive not to just talk at you, but to answer your questions.
Thank you, Lee. Well, we'll see. Yes, there are hands going up. Councillor Finnegan, you were first.
Thank you very much for coming down to speak to us today and providing your submission to us directly. I guess I've got a couple of questions, particularly around the toilets. I'm just wondering what configuration they'll be, and will they be open 24 hours?
Okay, so the ongoing management of the toilets is something, so the arrangement that we are proposing with this is to essentially fit out the toilets and then have a legal agreement where the operation is then handed kind of over, but the opening hours that are envisaged are along the lines of the supermarket, which opens till 10 p.m.
So the public bathrooms that you're stating would be closed at 10 p.m?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay then. And I'm just wondering around the configuration, like will they be male, female, disabled, or?
Yeah, so it's proposed for a 5 cubicle solution, which is 2 male, 2 female and 1 disabled toilet. And that follows the recommendations of the public toilet strategy, for Colac Otway Shire. So they'll be built out into specifications and to an agreed level with council.
So no unisex cubicles or the like?
No, but we can certainly investigate those.
Thank you. And the following question, I guess, bearing in mind there's a number of residential dwellings as part of the development, you're providing 13 car parks, but the reality is that, the way I see it is that perhaps those car parks could actually be, filled by people who are living there already, let alone who are living in those residential dwellings, let alone the employees at the supermarket. And I was just wondering if the applicant's open to providing, more than 13 car parks or lessening the amount of waivers from the requested 20 to make up for that fact, because as we all know, car parking in Apollo Bay is in short supply.
Yeah, so with car parking, what we are proposing to do, and the layout of the car parking provides a number of spaces at the first floor level, which will be used for the 4 apartments that are, well, the 4 dwellings that are at the first floor level above the supermarket level. And then car parking associated with the 5th dwelling, which is above the Pascoe Street block. That will be used from a central car parking area. I appreciate that we are waiving 20 and seeking a waiver of 20 car parking spaces, and that Apollo Bay can experience some acute car parking issues. I believe that there was a council survey undertaken and a study of the Great Ocean Road and car parking availability. What that survey found and came to conclude, which was that even in peak periods, the car park that this proposed development aims to essentially make better utilisation of is actually underused even in peak periods. Tourists who come down the Great Ocean Road tend to go for on-street car parks and tend to circulate on the Great Ocean Road or the side streets off it. They don't actually make it into that car park that we're proposing. So actually, when you're thinking about the relocation of the supermarket from its current location to this site and the custom that the supermarket attracts, it'll actually be freeing up on-street car parking spaces at that time into an area that's underused.
And thank you. And I've just got one more. In seeking the waiving of the 20 extra car parks, do you know the rough, just in round figures, the rough amount this will be saving the applicant if they don't have to pay for these, or pay for the contribution for these car parks? If you could state that for the record, thank you. Yeah,
that's all good. So the figure listed per car parking space, the waiver within the car parking overlay is $13,000 and that's for each space. So at a figure of 20 spaces, the outcome of that would be about $260,000. I appreciate it's not insubstantial. It's very, in terms of that figure, the public benefits we see outweigh that waiver. There are substantial public benefits to this scheme. It is taking advantage and making use of an existing asset, bringing that activity forward, creating that pedestrian link through and creating a good outcome for Apollo Bay as a town centre.
And providing public bathrooms which are locked at 10 p.m.
Yes,
rather than
not
24 hours.
Yeah, not forgetting the public bathrooms.
Thank you, Councillor Costin.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Lee. Yes, in relation to public toilets, I urge you to have a look at unisex toilets along similar lines to that proposed in Memorial Square. Are there separate staff toilets at all, or will staff use these toilets also?
It is a good question that I can't remember the answer to. I would have to take that on notice. I can't actually remember what the plans show.
And how many staff are proposed at any one time? The peak staff, I guess.
Peak staff. Well, it depends on the development and the amount of staff associated. Sorry. With the 2 retail units. I don't actually have the figure with me in terms of the supermarket. That could vary from peak period to winter period.
Yep, and that leads on to a question about the parking also, because staff need parking also.
Yeah.
So you've asked for a waiver of 20 parking spots, providing 13. But there are actually 3 parking places being removed from the existing car park to provide pedestrian access. Are they in the 20, or is it actually 23 you're asking for a waiver for?
It is 20, and we've agreed that with Council's transport engineer. In terms of as well, I think it's important to note, if I can stop coughing, it's important to note that there are temporary public toilets within that car park that occupy 5 spaces. So they've removed 5 spaces from availability, and by providing that public toilets, there's a net increase of 2. So there's a bit of a sum and calculation game going on.
Okay. In relation to the liquor licence, we've heard from officers that the liquor licence will be transferred from the existing IGA to the new site. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. So,
and will it be the same size or larger, or?
The area that will be for the proposed liquor is 86 square metres. That may be a little bit bigger than what's currently provided at the IGA, but it's the same operation, it's the same unit in terms of floor space. It'll be the same kind of product line that's on offer.
Okay, thank you. And the last question's about the access from pedestrian access from Great Ocean Road through to the car park, and our structure plans and other plans are keen to see greater permeability between Great Ocean Road and the Pascoe Street, or the car parks at the back. But you've got 2 gates proposed on that pedestrian access way. Are they proposed to be closed at certain times, or?
Outside of operation of the supermarket, it is our client's preference to essentially design out crime. So taking out design out crime principles, which is removing areas for concealment, which is again right next to their supermarket and glass windows. They operate multiple supermarkets. So the idea is outside of the operational hours is to close off and make sure that that's secure, so that areas of concealment are reduced. There's no loitering in that area. But during the day, it functions as a high quality public space.
Thank you, but I'm not quite understanding how you would design out crime with these gates, because the gates only cover half of that frontage, so there would still be another half of glass windows at the back.
Yeah, so there's it's in terms of that kind of walkway. So there's 2 gates proposed on either side of that walkway, and it essentially means that visibility or anyone that is loitering in that area can't go into that concealed area. They would be, essentially, you'd be able to see them from the car park if they were at the rear part of the site, which that would benefit from the overlooking from the surrounding properties. Or if they're on the Great Ocean Road, they're visible on the Great Ocean Road. It just stops them from being within that walkway area.
Thank you.
Councillor Finnegan.
Thank you, I'm back. I'm glad you brought up designing out crime. Was that the principle you mentioned?
It's something that kind of, if you've not guessed from the accent, not from Australia, but it comes across from the UK. But it also, there are design out crime principles within other planning schemes around Melbourne. And it's kind of trying to reduce that area concealment kind of principle.
And in relation to, I guess, the designing out crime principles, does that play into the decision to close the bathrooms at 10 p.m?
Yeah, it's also a management thing as well, in terms of if you've got staff around. It's obviously much safer if you've got staff to manage to clean those bathrooms as well, and just to make sure that someone's around. So that's the idea behind it.
The crimes that you're worried about being committed in the bathrooms around homelessness or anything of that ilk, or?
No, it's just general, well, any crime can be committed anywhere. But it's not specifically for that, it's more of a management thing in terms of cleaning and that kind of damage to fixtures, damage to everything. there's more, obviously, crime happens less when places are more either secured or outside of hours.
But theoretically, someone could graffiti or anything, or do anything they want in those
Anything.
bathrooms during operational hours, let alone
But the
after
likelihood,
hours.
yeah, the likelihood is that there'd be someone else there around, natural surveillance, to dissuade them from doing that.
Well, this is interesting because I think we've had a bit of a conversation, something with the unisex bathroom at Memorial Square in Colac, and I might bring this up during questions of officers a bit later, but we actually took that to 24-hour operation, and as I understand it, we haven't seen an increase in crime there, so I'm just a bit bewildered as to why we might.
Well, to be fair, I don't think he was saying there's going to be crime.
No.
Just as an overall general planning philosophy about how you design layouts of buildings to try and help prevent crime.
Yeah,
I don't think you
it's following
implied.
those principles. It's not strictly associated with the toilet. It's not strictly associated with the walkway. It's just the principles of that design and principles of operation.
Any other questions? No other questions. Thank you, Lee.
Thank you.
Councillor, do we have questions of officers? Councillor Finnegan?
And I guess it is around the point I just touched on around, just on a related issue and around concerns of crime within bathrooms and the like after hours. Do we have any idea if since we implemented at Memorial Square the 24-hour opening of the closed individual unisex cubicle there, if crime itself has gone up, like if there's been an increase in vandalism incidents or anything of that ilk?
Yeah, so through the chair, thanks Councillor Finnegan, I'll have to take that on notice. We don't have that information for this meeting.
Right, thank you very much.
Any other questions? Councillor Costin?
I'm interested in the parking need in the future, and we should be looking long term, I feel. Have we done any recent assessments of parking need, and do we know why that car park was not well utilised in the past? And have we looked at the impact of moving quite a substantial number of supermarket staff to that area, which will all require parking also?
I'm happy to take that question, Mayor.
Yeah, thanks, Mr McNeil. And just remember, this is a submissions hearing with questions about, I guess, about submissions. We've got plenty of time to answer those other questions.
I'm happy to put that on notice.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Costin. I think that's a good idea, if you don't mind. Yeah. You happy with that, Mr McNeil?
That's fine, thank you.
Question on those. Thanks, Graham. Any other questions of officers? No other questions. Councillors' officers have provided a report. Thank you. Councillor Finnegan, you'll move the recommendation. Is there a seconder, please? Thanks, Councillor Costin. Is it to be opposed? Councillor Finnegan?
I'd just like to once again thank you for making submission and being here to front up and answer questions that we've had in person. Sometimes the going back and forth via email, you can forget things and the like, and sometimes you think of things in the room. So do appreciate you being here and being able to be so forthright with your answers. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Costin? Nothing. Councillors, I'll put the motion to vote. All those in favour? Thank you. The motion is carried 6-0. Councillors, that concludes today's planning submissions hearing. Thank you. Thank you, Max, for tuning in. Thanks, officers.